I got it.
Hello. Welcome. So glad you're here. I think this should be an interesting event today. My name is Georgia Court. I'm the proprietor here. And before we get going, I'd always like to tell you, since you're obviously poetry lovers, or you wouldn't be here, what's coming up next with poetry. And that would be next Sunday at 2 o'clock in this space is our regular poetry mic. And the two readers will be Susan Nussbaum and Meredith Holmes. And Susan herself is with us today. She has just arrived from the frozen north. From the unfrozen north. She has arrived. Okay. Here today, we are going to celebrate James Merrill. He was born in 1926, died in 1995, and he's recognized as one of the leading poets of his generation. His work spanned genres, including plays and prose, but the bulk of his artistic expression is found in his poetry. Over the long course of his career, he won nearly every major literary award in America. He received 2 National Book Awards, a National Book Critics Circle Award, the Bobbitt National Prize for Poetry, which is presented by the Library of Congress, and the Pulitzer Prize. And we have 2 wonderful people who are here today to talk about James Merrill. One is Peter Hooten. Peter, who was James Merrill's companion until the poet's death in 1995, appeared with James Merrill in poetry readings, acted in Merrill's play, The Image Maker, and produced and acted in his Voices of Sandover. Peter made his career as an actor. His film work includes The Soldier, Orca, The Fifth Commandment, Once Upon a Love, and Prisoners. Among his television credits are Dr. Strange, Tribes, Marcus Welby, MD, and The Waltons. Rick Hillis is also with us. Hello, Rick. Rick had the good fortune to reside in Merrill's home. Yes, the place with the Ouija board made famous in Merrill's poetry. He lived there during the fall of 2007. A recipient of a Fulbright, Whiting, and Amy Lowell Traveling Scholarship, Rick's poems, essays, and translations have appeared in American Literary Review, 5 Points, Harper's, Kenyon Review, Literary Imagination, Narrative Magazine, The Nation, New Letters, The New Republic, Paris Review, Bloom, Poetry, Salmagundi, Smartish Pace. The list goes on and on and on. And he's the author of 2 books of poetry, Brother Salvage, A Map of the Lost World, and 3 chapbooks. And his most recent is My Roberto Clemente. He teaches in the English department and MFA program at Vanderbilt University. Please welcome Peter and Rick.
Thank you, Georgia.
Georgia, thank you so much for that incredibly generous introduction, truly. I want to thank, there's so many people to thank, of course, always, and we could probably be here for a long time just doing the things. But there's so many benevolent people who've made today possible, including Bryn, James, Elsie. I have a cheat sheet. I guess I need this. Ren, Melanie, Tony, and of course, among the benevolent presences is the most benevolent one, really. It's Georgia Court, truly. I mean, how can we thank her enough for creating this oasis for literature and the arts? And we need more places like this, absolutely. So yeah, those are some of the thanks, I think. And I want to also just thank you guys for coming. My God. This was, I would imagine, a perfect beach day, right? And you've come to listen to poetry and to help us celebrate James Merrill. Now, one thing that I'm doing to celebrate James Merrill, you may notice that I'm wearing a slightly eccentric sweater vest. Not really appropriate for the weather, right? This belonged to James Merrill. And was it knitted by John Hollander's first wife? What was her name?
His second wife.
Second wife, okay.
She's a painter. So she got her colors right.
She did. I feel a little like Charlie Brown in it. So I think you're going to start. Is that not right?
Sure, absolutely.
Absolutely. So please welcome the beloved of James Merrill and someone very close to our hearts, Peter.
Oh. Goodness gracious. One of James's book is called, one of his books is The Country of 1,000 Years of Peace. He had a Swiss poet friend, Hans Lodize, had passed away young, and James attended him. And this is a dedication. Hans, there are moments when the whole mind resolves into a pair of brimming eyes, or lips parting to drink from the deep spring of a death, that freshness they do not yet understand, or need to understand. These are the moments, if ever an angel steps into the mind, as kings into the dress of a poor goatherd, for their acts of charity. There are moments when speech is but a mouth pressed lightly and humbly against the angel's hand. There's a photo for this event. It's James in a kitchen. I think it's his grandmother's kitchen in New York. And he's in a kimono. Well, he spent in the 1950s in Japan, and he developed a friendship with Donald Ritchie, who's a very wonderful translator of the Japanese into English. And Donald Ritchie kept him in kimonos for the rest of his life. So, this is kimono, and I want you to imagine if there were a picture of the kimono, but it's in this advertisement. It's a beautiful scripted. The script is vertical, and it's like a stream rushing down. And I just want you to imagine that underneath that kimono is his birthday suit.
It's good to remember that, right? We're celebrating his 98th birthday, which would have been today, right? And we're getting ready. This is just practicing for the 100th birthday in 2 years. So this is the poem, Kimono, the Kimono. When I returned from Lover's Lane, my hair was white as snow. Joy, incomprehension, pain, I'd seen like seasons come and go. How I got home again, frozen, half dead, perhaps you know. You hide a smile and quote a text. Desires ungratified persist from one life to the next. Hearths we strip ourselves beside, long, long ago were X'd on blueprints of consuming pride. Time out of mind, the bubble gleam to our charred level drew April back, a sudden beam. Keep talking while I change into the pattern of a stream bordered with rushes white on blue.
A downward look. Seen from above, the sky is deep. Clouds float down there, foam on a long, luxurious bath. Their shadows over limbs submerged in air, over protuberances, false, a delta thicket, glide. On high, the love that drew the bath and scattered it with salts still radiates new projects, old as day, and hardly registers the tug when far beneath a wrinkled baby hand happens upon the plug.
Did you want to say something about the Pantheon?
Yes, indeed. What would a birthday party be without lots of friends coming? Thank you. But also, I'd like to, some guests have been invited who didn't RSVP because they're no longer here, but Wallace Stevens, Elizabeth Bishop, and W.H. Alden are going to be read. And also, Rick is going to read one of his poems later. But these writers, James always had quick access to. I remember him, bedside book of Wallace Stevens, he would always reread. W.H. Auden, in the long poem he wrote called The Changing Light at Standover, he channeled the voice of Auden like a great character actor would. I mean, it's astounding, and he wrote it. And Elizabeth Bishop, he was just in love with it. They seemed to be a bar for him. And here the pictures are around it. Do you think they'll like this poem? And that type of thing. And so we're going to honor them as well on James's birthday. Yay.
And here's the first guest in that sort of trinity. This is Wallace Stevens, one of my favorite poems by him, to be honest, called Final Soliloquy of the Internal Paramour. Light the first light of evening, as in a room in which we rest, and for small reason think the world imagined is the ultimate good. This is therefore the intensest rendezvous. It is in that thought that we collect ourselves out of all the indifferences into one thing. Within a single thing, a single shawl wrapped tightly around us since we are poor. A warmth, a light, a power, the miraculous influence. Here now, we forget each other and ourselves. We feel the obscurity of an order, a whole, a knowledge, that which arranged the rendezvous. Within its final boundary, its vital boundary, in the mind, we say God and the imagination are one. How high that highest candle lights the dark. Out of this same light, out of the central mind, we make a dwelling in the evening air, in which being there together is enough.
And again, of Wallace Stevens, of mere being, the poem at the end of the mind, beyond the last thought, rises in the bronze door. A gold-feathered bird sings in the poem, without human meaning, without human feeling, a foreign song. You know then that it is not the reason that makes us happy or unhappy. The bird sings, its feathers shine. The poem stands on the edge of space. The wind moves slowly in the branches. The bird's fire-fangled feathers dangle down.
Can I just take a second to say what an honor it is to be doing this with Peter Hooten, and what an honor it's been to become his friend, and to even be able to refer to him as Uncle Peter. I mean, what an amazing thing for me, an incredible gift, and an amazing thing that we're able to do this together. Anyway, I'll be pinching myself for days probably. But so the next poem by the next poet we're inviting to this gathering, I guess invoking, is the poet Elizabeth Bishop. And she has this poem appropriately titled Florida. All right. Florida, the state with the prettiest name, the state that floats in brackish water, held together by mangrove roots that bear, while living, oysters in clusters. And when dead, strew white swamps with skeletons, dotted as if bombarded with green hammocks like ancient cannonballs sprouting grass. The state full of long S-shaped birds, blue and white, and unseen hysterical birds who rush up the scale every time in a tantrum. Tanagers embarrassed by their flashiness, and pelicans whose delight it is to clown, who coast for fun on the strong tidal currents, in and out among the mangrove islands, and stand on the sandbars, drying their damp gold wings on sunlit evenings, Enormous turtles, helpless and mild, die and leave their barnacled shells on the beaches, and their large white skulls with round eye sockets twice the size of a man's. The palm trees clatter in the stiff breeze like the bills of the pelicans. The tropical rain comes down to freshen the tide-looped strings of fading shells. Job's tear, the Chinese alphabet, the scarce Juanonia, party-colored pectins and ladies' ears, arranged as on a gray rag of rotted calico. The buried Indian princess's skirt. With these, the monotonous, endless, sagging coastline is delicately ornamented. 30 or more buzzards are drifting down, 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 over something they have spotted in the swamp, in circles like stirred-up flakes of sediment sinking through water. Smoke from woods, fires, filters, fine blue solvents. On stumps and dead trees, the charring is like black velvet. The mosquitoes go hunting to the tune of their ferocious obligatos. After dark, the fireflies map the heavens in the marsh until the moon rises. Cold white, not bright, the moonlight is coarse-meshed, and the careless, corrupt state is all black specks, too far apart, and ugly whites, the poorest postcard of itself. After dark, the pools seem to have slipped away. The alligator, who has 5 distinct calls: friendliness, love, mating, war, and a warning, whimpers and speaks in the throat of the Indian princess.
James loved Elizabeth Bishop. His family was from Florida, his parents and grandparents, and his beloved grandmother, this is to her, Miss Annie, the water hyacinth. When I was 4 or so, I used to read aloud to you. I mean, recite stories both of us knew by heart. The book held close to even then nearsighted eyes. It was morning, you still in your nightgown over cold tea would nod approval. Once I caught a gay note in your quiet, the book was upside down. Now all is upside down. I sit while you babble. I watch your sightless face jerk swiftly here and there, set in a puzzled frown. Your face, it is no more yours than its reflected double, bobbing on scummed water. Other days, the long, pure sobs break from a choked source. Nobody here would dare fathom, even if able. With you no longer able, I tried to keep apart at first, or to set right the stories you would tell. The European trip, the fire of 1908, I could reel them off in sleep, given a phrase to start. Chimneys of kerosene lamps only you could clean because your hands were small. I have them all by heart, but cannot now find heart to hinder them from growing together. Wrong, absurd. Do as you must, poor stranger. There is no surer craft to take you where you are going. A story I have heard and shall over and over till you are indeed gone. Last night the mockingbird wept and laughed, telling it to the moon. Your entire honeymoon, a ride in a rowboat on the St. John's River, took up an afternoon. And by that time, of course, the water hyacinth had come here from Japan, a mauve and rootless guest, thirsty for life, afloat with you on the broad span it would in 60 years so vividly congest. Yes. Thank you.
27.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's okay to lose your place.
It's the only way you can become found later.
Lorelei, the stones of kin and friend stretch off into a trembling, sweat-like haze. They may not, after all, be stepping stones, but you have followed them. Each strands you, then does not. Not yet, not here. Is it a crossing? Is there no way back? Soft gleams lap the base of one behind you, on which a black girl sings and combs her hair. It's she who someday, when your stone is in place, will see that much further into the golden vagueness, forever about to clear. Love with its chisel deepens the lines begun upon your face.
But before that, we have love. We have a lot of love to have and experience. This poem is by the wonderful poet W.H. Auden that Peter was mentioning earlier, one of the members of that pantheon of James Merrill's. This is also just one of my favorites by him, called Lullaby. I've heard people describe it as the first modern love poem, not necessarily professing eternal love, but championing the love we can have in this we call the moment. Lullaby. Lay your sleeping head, my love, human, on my faithless arm. Time and fevers burn away individual beauty from thoughtful children, and the grave proves the child ephemeral. But in my arms till break of day, let the living creature lie, mortal, guilty, but to me the entirely beautiful. Soul and body have no bounds to lovers as they lie upon her tolerant, enchanted slope in their ordinary swoon. Grave the vision Venus sends of supernatural sympathy, universal love and hope, while an abstract insight wakes among the glaciers and the rocks, the hermit's carnal ecstasy. Certainty, fidelity, on the stroke of midnight pass, like vibrations of a bell, and fashionable madmen raise their pedantic, boring cry. Every farthing of the cost, all the dreaded cards foretell, shall be paid, but from this night, not a whisper, not a look, not a thought, nor a kiss, nor look be lost. Beauty, midnight, vision dies. Let the winds of dawn that blow softly round your dreaming head such a day of welcome show, eye and knocking heart may bless. Find the mortal world enough. Noons of dryness find you fed by the involuntary powers. Nights of insult let you pass, watched by every human love.
Thank you, Rick. Again, by James Merrill, B-O-D-Y, body. Look closely at the letters. Can you see entering stage right, then floating full, then heading off so soon? How like a little cold-rimmed moon, O plots her course from B to D, as Y, unanswered, knocks at the stage door. Looked at too long, words fail, phase out. Ask, now that body shines no longer, by what light you learned these lines, and what the B and D stood for. Between us, a face. There it lies on the pillow by your turned head, tangled, graying hair. Another, like a shrunken head, too small. My eyes in red shut Open, it's there, waxen and human, small. The taut crease of the mouth shifts. It seems to smile, chin up in the wan light. Elsewhere I have known what it was, this thing, known the blind eye slit, the knuckle sharp, cheekbone, ah. And a gandu, not a face, a hand, seen clearly, mine. Deliver me, I breathe, watching it unclench with a soft moan and reach for you. He's behaved. Elizabeth Bishop's such an incredible influence on James that he decided to, this was the perfect, I'd say, imitation in a way, to imitate Elizabeth in writing this little note. Or no, this was the Victor Dog.
The Victor Dog, yeah. You know what, I was just thinking, this poem reminds me a bit of Elizabeth Bishop's poem called Pink Dog.
Oh, that's
know?
what I'm. That's what
Yeah.
And this is James's Victor Dog, dedicated to Elizabeth Bishop. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that so much. Georgia was saying a little bit earlier, I had a chance to have a residency for a whole semester, like September to December, in James Merrill's old apartment in Stonington, Connecticut, 107 Water Street. It was magical to be there, you could imagine. And last summer, so I got this email saying, I could apply, there was no, there's no telling if I would get the residency or not. And I found out later that what they did is they took everybody's name who applied and put the names in a martini tumbler, shook them around, and then the current fellow just picked a name, and it happened to be mine. So my girlfriend and I got to go there last summer, which was amazing. And one of the stunning things about his apartment, and I don't know, it's sort of a window into this other age. I mean, as I'm looking around, I'm imagining a number of you love vinyl, right? And even maybe younger people. I'm sort of looking in the back suddenly, like, do you guys buy vinyl? Do you? No, you have vinyl, right?
I still play.
And you still play it, right? So last summer, my girlfriend and I would just wake up in the morning and, we'd make ourselves breakfast and we would just choose from the amazing assortment of albums, different things to play. It just sort of sets, it's like a kind of tuning up, it felt like being tapped by a really beautiful tuning fork. So the Victor Dog, it's a title that might need a little explanation of some sort. Just thinking about, the labels of records, right? And a number of us will remember that very familiar one of the dog kind of listening to a Victrola. Yeah, the RCA. Thank you so much. Exactly, the Victor Dog. So this is James Merrill's poem, dedicated, as Peter was saying, to Elizabeth Bishop. The Victor Dog. Bix to Buxtehude to Boulez, the little white dog on the Victor label listens long and hard as he is able. It's all in a day's work, whatever plays. From judgment it would seem he has refrained. He even listens earnestly to block, then builds a church upon our acid rock. He's man's, no, he's the lyreman's best friend, or would be, if hearing and listening were the same. Does he hear? I fancy he rather smells. Those lemon gold arpeggios and revels, léger de palais de ce que sans which translates to the jets of water from the palace of those who love each other. He ponders the Schumann concerto's tall window hit by lightning and stays put. When he surmises through one of Bach's eternal boxwood mazes, the oboe pungent as a bitch in heat, or when the calypso decants its raw bay rum on the moon in Wozzeck, reddens ripe for murder. He doesn't sneeze or howl, just listens harder. Adamant needles bear down on him from whirling of outer space, too black, too near. but he was taught as a puppy not to flinch, much less to imitate his bête noire Blanche, who barked, fat foolish creature, at King Lear. Still others fought in the road's filth over Jezebel, slavered on hearths of horned and pelted barons. His forebears lacked, to say the least, forbearance. Can nature change in him? Nothing is impossible. The last chord fades. The night is cold and fine. His master's voice rasps through the groove's bare groves. Obediently, in silence, like the graves, he sleeps there on the still warm gramophone. Only to dream he is at the premiere of a Handel opera long thought lost, Il cane minore, the minor dog. Its allegorical subject is his story. A little dog revolving round a spindle gives rise to harmonies beyond belief, a cast of stars. Is there in Victor's heart no honey for the vanquished? Art is art. The life it asks of, the life it asks of us is a dog's life.
Dead Center by James. Upon reflection, as I dip my pen tonight, forth ripple messages in code. In now's black waters burn the stars of then. Seen from the embankment, marble men sleep upside down, batwise, the sleep bestowed upon reflection. As I dip my pen, thinking how others, deeper into Zen, blew on immediacy until it glowed. In now's black waters burn the stars of then. Or else I'm back at grandmother's. I'm 10. Just hides my parents' roadster from the road, which dips into reflection with my pen. Breath after breath, harsh odes of oxygen, never deciphered. What do they forebode? In now's black waters burn the stars. Ah, then leap memory, supreme equestrian, through hoops of fire, circuits you overload, beyond reflection, as I dip my pen, in now's black waters burn the stars of then. This is James, he loved to give birthday presents. He loved to receive birthday presents. And he gave a friend, a poet, a lovely fountain pen one birthday. And this was the inscription. Inscription on a fountain pen gift. Together, half in love and half in pain, missing the point, we dipped our pens. But who can read such flowing script when hearts are humbled, words are vain? And on this note of inscription, I thought the perfect thing to do today, and since Rick is going to read his own poem, is give Rick James's pen.
Wow, this is kind of crazy. So I'm wearing this vest, right? I'm not saying that this stain on it was caused by this pen, but it could have happened. It could have happened.
So that's a poem in itself.
Wow.
A stained sweater.
It's remarkable. Forgive me, before I read my poem, this makes me think of something I read about around the time of James Merrill's funeral. One of his friends, Alan Kurganis, talked about, you know, how lovely it is and how lucky we are when the great man is also a good man. And he talked about James Merrill in that way, dispersing his genius, you know, like just, it's a model of generosity I think we all may one day try to emulate in our various ways. Goodness, I guess I want to say too, so, you know, all poems have, well, as one teacher said, all poems are married to somebody. You know, this poem I don't know that it's married to James Merrill, but it certainly has, you know, this residency I was telling you about that my girlfriend and I got to go to last summer at his house. This poem started percolating there. It may have, in fact, been a seedling just a few weeks before when we were on this landscape, this wonderful part of Italy, seaside town called Baliasco. Just a gorgeous place. I hope you all get to go there sometime if you haven't. So this is called Baliasco. The real feeling I have beyond gratitude that lasts longer the more I watch the Ligurian sea in daylight or at dusk, Brancusi moon, first stars, cooling breeze, is how guilty I feel that I'm the one who gets to see it and not my mother, now mostly living in her chair, which makes me rub my eyes as I watch the sunset. And because I'm nothing if not my mother's son, I think of how much she'd love this coast and her one painting I know of that survives, its lean box open in the basement, of a white Hokusai wave breaking on dark rocks by the sea. Just thinking of it, I start to feel another breeze across my skin, giving me goose flesh. The ease of it conjures the heart of her painting, a red sunset where already parts of paint flake off. Now see how in this painting, likely to be my mother's last, that the sunset itself now has become so bright, it's burning through the canvas, singeing the air. Once I saw midnight in my mother's lovely hair, and copper highlights bright as a custodian's keys, to rooms that open for her in another life I don't have access to. So I stand out in the sun and hope this sudden illumination of her will last, at least long enough for us to begin to see past the rooms of darkness to those holding mercy for my mother and myself. The fresh air here helps me imagine a place more luminous and vast, whose shutters, even in trompe-l'oeil, open with ease. So I can imagine her taking in these turquoise sapphires from the seat she's confined to now in her sunset life. And how I want my mother to know a good life and its mercies. And she's happiest by the sea, where all the shattered light of the reckless and relentless sun shines for her. The whole turquoise surface sapphires my mother's hair, so alive now in the breeze. How I pray a moment as joyous as this one might be her last. And even if her last painting crumbles into the sea, I am her son, and so I carry her and her image like keys in me that find new uses wherever I go.
Thank you, Rick.
Before I turn this off, there were only a select number of ways that we could invite our guest of honor to come. There was, of course, the Ouija board, but I am not really good at that. So we have YouTube, which is
This is a poem by Elizabeth Bishop, One Art. And Elizabeth didn't particularly care she wasn't a reader. It didn't, whatever. But James was a wonderful reader, and he reads better than anybody else. This poem, One Art.
The art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost that their loss is no disaster. Lose something every day. Accept the fluster of lost door keys, the hour badly spent. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Then practice losing farther, losing faster. Places and names and where it was you meant to travel. None of these will bring disaster. I lost my mother's watch, And look, my last or next to last of 3 loved houses went. The art of losing isn't hard to master. I lost 2 cities, lovely ones, and vaster, some realms I owned, 2 rivers, a continent. I missed them, but it wasn't a disaster. Even losing you, the joking voice, a gesture I love, I shan't have lied. It's evident the art of losing's not too hard to master, though it may look like, right hit, like disaster.
Next. Next. James worked on the Ouija board with a friend. It was rather a salon gift that they did. Before long, he began transcribing these yes and no's and a's in these letters, and by all these forces began to speak, including W.H. Auden and friends, etc., dead friends. And it was wonderful. At least in the midst of the book, there's this lovely, say, respite or interlude, I should say, called Samos, and it's a proper canzone, and I praise. It's one of the most beautiful poems ever.
And still at sea all night, we had a sense of sunrise.
Golden oil poured upon light, soothing the need.
Letting the sleeper sense what inborn amniotic homing sense was fairer in him. Now the dream fire, in which it has been felt each human sense burns, now through ship's radar's cool sixth sense, or mere unerring starlight, to an island. Here we were, the twins of sea and land, up and about for hours, hues, cries, sense, had placed at eye level a single light for song. The harbor glazed with warm pink light.
Fire wisps were weaving a string bag of light for sea stones. Their astounding color sense, porphyry, alabaster, chrysolite translucences that go dead in daylight, asked only the quick dip in holy water for the saint of cell on cell to come alight, illuminating crystals, thinking light, refracting it, the gray prismatic fire or yellow-gray of sea's dilute sapphire. Wavelengths daily deeply score the light motifs of loom and wheel upon this land. To those who listen, it's the promised land.
A little spin today, dirt roads inland dance and revolve in a nerve-jangling light, doing the ancient dances of the land, where gnarled those olive trees that shag the land with silver. Old men, their two-bladed sense of spendthrift poverty, the very land being, if not loath, tomb, superbly land upright on the downbeat. We who water the local wine, which drinks itself like water, clap for more. Cry out to be this island, licked all over by white salt fire, bee noons pulsing ember raked by fire. Know nothing now but her, air, water, fire. For once out of the frying pan to land within their timeless everlasting fire. Blood's least red monocle, oh magnifier of the great eye that sees by its own light more pictures in the world's enchanted fire than come and go in any shrewd crossfire upon the page of syllable and sense. We want unwilled excursions and ascents, crave the upward rippling run's fire, the outward rippling rings enough of water.
Now some details. How else will this hold water? Our room's 3 flights above the whitewashed waterfront where Pythagoras was born. A fire escape of sky blue iron leads down to water. Yachts creak on mirror berths, and over water voices from Sweden or Somaliland tell how this or that one crossed the water to Ephesus, came back with toilet water and a 2-kilo box of Turkish delight. Trifles. Yet they shine with such pure light in memory, even they, that the eyes water. As with the setting sun, or innocence, do things that fade especially make sense? Samos, we keep trying to make sense of what we can, not souls of the first water, although we've put on airs and taken fire. We shall be dust of quite another land before the seeds here planted come to light.
Let's sing happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear James. Happy birthday to you. Yay, thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Do you want to take questions? Do you?
Well, any questions, sure.
Who was that handsome fellow with the resonating voice in that video?
You're so sweet, JJ. And did you bring any of your sculptures around? Oh, no. You're a heavy
He
duty.
was pretty sexy.
So sweet. Well,
Yes, please.
So, had you ever studied with James?
You know, I wish I had. I studied with friends of his who would tell lovely stories of him. There was one time I almost met him at a poetry reading, and I was at a little book table, just sort of rummaging through the books, and a friend of mine came up to me and said, "Did you realize that James Merrill was standing right in front of you for the longest time?" And I told Peter that, and he said, "Oh, you must have reminded him of so and so." There was somebody. Anyway, so I've had near misses, and then there's sort of, it's a remarkable thing, isn't it, when you get to know someone through someone, a beloved, like the last major beloved, right? And there have been times when when I visited, he'll say, "Well, I'm going to take you to St. Petersburg and the Dali Museum today, and it's on James." and I feel like, my goodness, this benevolent person. I feel the presence of him, though I'd never met him. Certainly, the time in his old apartment, and it was 2 floors. He had what he called the sky deck on top that he had deck redone, and then there's an area where you can read and write and look at the Stonington Harbor. So I never studied with him and had friends who did and just said marvelous things about him. But miraculously I feel this closeness to him, and certainly fostered very much by Peter. And then I'm going to have a ceremony, right?
It's funny you asked that. James didn't teach very much. He taught at Bard, and then he taught at Wisconsin at a master's program, and there were 4 students in his class, and he was in touch with the students for the rest of his life.
Wow.
And I remember going to the Czech Republic with him, and he wrote a poem for Alan Gurganis, themes on the Czech themes. And I came upon the poem Xeroxed 4 times, and he put a note on it. He didn't send them. He said, "For my 4 students." Going way back. So Stephen Yenser, who became one of his executors, Judith Moffat, and a really wild fellow by the name of Antler.
He was in that class? He was in that class, Antler?
Yeah,
I've met Antler.
Well, maybe that's who it reminded me. You reminded me.
Oh, I don't know.
He's from Minnesota. Yes, he's a real lumberjack. Real fascinating. And would stand on us like Whitman with a staff. And he's very, fascinating. Oh, yes.
Are there things about JM that you, that recur to you? That things about living with him that you could share in polite company?
Oh,
that
my
would
goodness.
be some way
Rick,
of
you might take the microphone.
thanks.
Oh.
That's a good idea.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, there's there's so many. I'm afraid my friend Tim will say, "Oh, another James story." Or Mary, it just is. Oh, I do want to. You asked me yesterday, does he ever come to me in dreams? And I said, yes, he does. And it's fascinating because he comes to me in middle age, at his most verbose, at the top of his form. And even if I'm depressed or whatever I'm going through in my dream, he's how do you say, guides me through it. He gives me a reason why I dreamt it right off the bat when I wake up. But recurringly, as will happen to the most important people in your life, your parents, you dream of them, your loves, etc.
Any of his like verbal play, any verbal hijinks that come to mind when you think about being with him and just sort of playing linguistically with him? Maybe when he was getting ready to write or something.
No, he was always playing. He thought poetry all the time. Right? An artist would know that you think your art all the time because you do it all the time. And being with him, we took, like, for instance, on a walk in Cornwall. We're walking miles, and he said, let's play rhyming games. And here, I'm not a poet, but he would have me rhyming. He said, that's a good rhyme, you know? No, let's try for some more. You know? So he was always a bit didactic, but fun. You know, he was a crossword puzzle fellow, and, you know, just all about words. So he had words way of, I mean, it was always fascinating. And, so many stories. I mean, one story with Elizabeth Bishop, since she's here. Oh, he went to Brazil to visit Elizabeth Bishop, and she had a hard time in life. She was on the wagon and off the wagon, which means she would drink and she couldn't drink. And he didn't realize that. He brought her a bottle of scotch. And she had a painter staying in her house. And the painter came home and said, oh, Mrs. Bishop, you're crying. She said, I'm only crying in English. so he was good at telling stories about other people.
I don't know if anyone has any questions you'd like to ask now that we've gotten Peter to open up a bit about, J.L.
We stay here all day.
Well,
Keep talking. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all so much for making the time for this.
And thank you, Georgia.
Yes.
Thank you both for coming.